Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we've got some really good tips on one of my favorite types of plastic, and that's a swimming worm. You know, swimming worms have been around for quite some time now, but they've gone from being just what was considered a bait to be used in weed to an extremely versatile bait. Anglers have really recognized that there are a lot of different approaches that you can take with a swimming worm like this Berkeley Speed Boss or something like the Zoom Speed Worm. Most companies these days have a swimming worm, but I gotta tell you, they're not just made for grass. You know, like I was saying, they're made for a lot of different presentations, and they can be used from shallow water to deep water. Heck, they can be used as top water. So they're an extremely versatile bait, and I think they go pretty underutilized in my opinion. There's a few places in the country where it's a staple, like down in Florida, but really when you start getting outside of that Florida region or up here in the northern country where you have a lot of grass in your lakes, people are not using them as much as they should. So that's what I want to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the bait itself, and then we're going to show you some different retrieves and different ways to rig the bait so that you can go out on your local lake and apply it in some manner. Just because you don't have grass doesn't mean you can't use a swimming worm. But before I get into it, guys, I do want to remind you, if you're looking to purchase some tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. The link is in the description of the video. It's a really good way to show your support. Also, if you're looking to get a little bit more content from me, check out my channel membership. We've got a couple of different levels that include extra videos, monthly live streams. It's a good way to get some additional content if you're looking for that from me. All right, so today we're talking about swimming worms, like I said. A swimming worm is a long profiled bait with a small kicker tail on the end. You know, in this case, you've got two little boot tails so that when you pull it through the water, it kicks really well. The Zoom Speed Worm has their Ultra Vibe tail on the end. I think Gambler's got one. I think it's called the Burner Worm. Most companies, like I said, have something that's got anywhere from a little cut tail to a little flapper tail on the end to a boot tail. But the key here is it's a long profiled worm, and these are the larger versions, which I personally prefer, because the larger versions would have the long profile and the more mass really glide better in the water, and that's something that I'm looking for if I'm not doing a straight retrieve on it. But you can get all of these worms in smaller sizes. You know, this is the 6 3/4 inch size. I think you can get them all the way down to 4 3/4 if you're talking about the Speed Boss. This is the Magnum Speed Worm. You can get it down in the regular speed worm size, which I think is like a 6-inch version. But that's really what we're going for. The key here though is because you've got the large worm body, it allows you to do a couple of things. If you're fishing around grass, it comes through extremely weedless because it's just a straight, long, slender profile. But at the same time, you get good kicking motion out of the tails. So if you're fishing in a little off-colored water, you still have the vibration and disturbance from those tails to draw fish to it. It's really important to understand that it's not just meant to be straight retrieved. You can fish it in so many different ways. When it first came out, what most guys were doing was straight retrieving it through grass. But nowadays, what we've come to find out is it works really well in other means. So let's go down to the water. I want to show you a couple of the ways that I like to rig it and show you how versatile that this bait actually is. All right, so the most classic presentation is just a simple Texas rigged where you've got a bullet weight above it. In most cases, I would say you're going to be fishing anywhere from a 1/4 ounce up to a 1/2 ounce. I like to leave it unpegged because when I pull the bait, if I'm not straight retrieving it, I get a good flutter and a good glide out of the bait. I think that's a really big key. Some people will peg it, but that's totally up to you. It's personal preference. I just prefer, like, if I kill it in a hole of grass somewhere, I like the bait to separate from the weed. And I'll show you just the simple swimming motion here. Let's make sure we can see it. So hopefully you can see that down there. It's just a really good glide, but when I stop it, the bait separates because the weight pulls off from it. But you get really good gliding motion out of it. and it's just something that generates strikes. But here's the retrieve. So the most standard retrieve is you fire it out, and then if you're fishing a grass flat, you just really have a nice steady retrieve. If you get caught in a clump, you might pop it, rip it free, almost like you're fishing a chatterbait, but you're fishing it basically like how you would a swim jig. Just a straight retrieve. You're trying to keep it ticking the tops of grass. Nothing special. It's a very good way to present it because you're gonna tick the tops of the grass and definitely trigger some strikes. If I fall, like say I'm swimming it through lily pads, which is another thing you can do. If I come to a hole in the lily pads, that's where I'll kill it and I'll just let it fall down. And that's why I like to have that unpegged weight. So I'll be reeling it through, and then just kill it, and there you go. That's how, you know, you get it down. The thing here is, one of my favorite ways to present it, even if I'm fishing a grass flat, is not just the straight retrieve. What I really like to do, and this is my favorite retrieve with a swimming worm, is I throw it out, I let it hit the bottom, and then I sweep it. And the reason I do that is because when you sweep it, the mass of that bait draws it up towards the surface. But again, that weight separates and you get a slow fall from the worm, a slow glide back. So I let it hit the bottom and then I sweep it. I let it fall back into the grass and then I sweep it. And that's gonna trigger strikes because you're popping it out of that grass. You know, you get a lot of those reaction strikes from fish that are sitting in those thick clumps and they see that get ripped by in front of their face. Now it's not a stroke. I'm not really ripping it. I'm just letting it settle on top of the grass and then I give it a nice pull. And it's a full probably 6 foot swipe from rod tip from where I start. It's say noon, I'm pulling it to 3 o'clock. But that is getting the bait up above the grass and letting it settle. That's my #1 retrieve when fishing a swimming worm. And the key here is that is not just a grass thing. You can go fish anywhere. If I get on this bank right here, which is a nice rock gravel bank, I can fish this through that, and I would fish it in a similar manner where I'm throwing it out and just giving it just a nice sweep pull back to the boat. Really good way to generate some strikes. So the next way is the same thing. It's a Texas rig, but I like to take the weight off of it. In this case, you can see I've got no weight. And the reason for that is because it's a phenomenal topwater bait. You throw it out, keep your rod tip pointed up a little bit, and just a nice steady retrieve. It's basically a soft plastic topwater buzz bait. Really good way to generate strikes. The key here, and hopefully you can see that, the key here is it's so weedless that you don't have to worry about there being grass in the water. You don't have to worry about there being debris floating around, getting your buzzbait all clogged up. It's basically like a soft topwater toad. You've got that good kicking motion. It just generates really good topwater strikes. So that nothing special. The key to that is just to get the right pace. Keep your rod tip up and slowly lower it as the bait comes closer. Nice steady retrieve. The nice thing here is if you do hit a hole in the grass or you hit a hole in the pads or you get a blow up, you can kill it and that bait will glide back down to the bottom, and a lot of times you get that fish to come back for it a second time. So this is one of the classic ways to fish this bait if you're talking about being down in Florida or up here in the North Country where you're fishing through just a lot of emergent grass. Definitely a good way to go. The last presentation I like to do with a swimming worm is to put it on a wobble head. Now, a worm isn't technically the bait you would think of when you use a wobble head, but it works really well on this. You know, again, these worms have a lot more kick power, a lot more vibration than, say, your normal curly tail worms. So they really do work well on something like this because they draw a lot of attention to the bait itself. And if you use a larger one, you will just create more mass, and it's something that works really well in dirty water. Now, one quick tip anytime you're using a wobble head that I want to point out is do not pull your plastic bait up over your hook eye. You want to leave room for that wobble head to swing freely on that hook eye. So some people, when they Texas rig, like to really slide their bait up over the eye to kind of protect the knot. You don't need to do that in this case. So I highly recommend making sure that you have room between your wobble head and the top of the hook eye so that you get full movement out of it. But in this case, you're not going to fish it any different than you would a normal wobble head. You're just going to throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and then I fish it just like a crankbait almost. Nice, slow, straight retrieve, kind of feeling through all the rocks, and then I might kill it once in a while. Just pick it up. I'm basically just trying to finesse it through all the different rocks and debris that's down there. Now, when I feel a bite, I do like to make sure that they have it because it's a longer profile bait, and a lot of times they'll pick up the tail. So I might give them a second to eat it, but I just like to make sure that they have it. So if I feel a bite, I'll pull on it to make sure that they're swimming with it before I set the hook. But it's just a nice slow retrieve. You're letting that top end of that worm just floats up and is just fluttering around, drawing attention to it. It's a great profile to throw on your wobble heads. The other technique that I will use this for is a Carolina rig. I don't feel like I need to put it on a Carolina rig to show you guys, but it's definitely something that works. Here, hopefully you can see it down there. I mean, it's basically like a big crawfish just crawling around on the bottom, but because the worm is longer, you get some more side-to-side motion out of it, and it's something the fish don't necessarily see all the time, but there are times, especially in the summer months, where I feel like a worm outperforms a craw, and that's where I would prefer to throw a something like the Speed Boss on a wobble head versus a cross style bait on a wobble head this time of year. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Don't think that your swimming worms should only be fished in a straight retrieve through grass. You can fish it in so many different manners. It's an extremely versatile bait, and one that I've been using to catch a lot of big fish over the last couple of years. So give it a try. Check them out. I've got links to these baits so you can see specifically what I'm talking about in the video description. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. We'll have more videos coming out tomorrow.